I had an interesting message pop into my inbox the other day from a colleague who put out this comment and then asked me a question. I'm going to read it to you word for word because I want you to have some context. So he said, I found that 80% of people are significantly more powerful in person than online. Their online presence doesn't have close to the same impact. And then he asked me what I thought about that. And I thought, that's kind of an interesting statement to make. He does do quite a bit of research in this area. And my response was very wishy-washy. It was basically, well, it depends on whether or not they know how to maximize their presence in the virtual room. And then I gave a couple of reasons why this occurs. So today I wanted to talk to you all about how you are giving away your power when you're virtual, but more importantly, how you can make sure that you keep it. Hi, I'm Karin Reed. I'm a 4-time author, Emmy Award-winning broadcast journalist, and communication expert on helping people to own the room, whether it be a physical one or a virtual one. Welcome to Speaker Dynamics. When it comes to being a powerful communicator, certainly the platform matters, right? Obviously the richest platform that we communicate over is face-to-face, in person. There's no doubt that it's easier to have influence and impact in the room when we're actually sharing the air with those who are in the room with us. However, if you look at the research that Dr. Joe Allen did for our various books, Suddenly Virtual, Suddenly Hybrid, he found that the second richest medium is video. So you are, communicating over a virtual platform, you have your video on. It's still a pretty powerful way of communicating. A distant third is audio alone, where you don't have your camera on. So in order to be powerful in the medium that you have available to you, you have to understand that there's nuance and things that you have to change in order to ensure that you can have as much presence as possible in the room as that room allows you. So today I want to share with you 5 ways that we give away our power when virtual, and also give you some suggestions on how you can better ensure that you retain as much of it as possible. So the first way that we give away our power in a virtual room is when we keep our cameras off. Now, I know a lot of you out there are saying, but oh my gosh, video call fatigue. It's so painful to have to turn the camera on. I haven't done my hair, or, maybe you're just in a different place than you normally would be if you were doing a virtual call and you don't want to turn the camera on. I get it. I get all of that. But recognize if your goal is to be powerful in that room. So if your goal is to have influence and impact over the decisions that are being made, or to inspire people to take action, having the video on is a critical component of that. And if you show up as like a disembodied voice or maybe just initials in a circle, it is very, very difficult to have power in that room. You are making yourself less memorable, and you're also making your message less memorable as well. So I often do this initial survey at the beginning of any sort of virtual presence training I do, where I say, okay, so when you're talking on a webcam, how many people do you feel like you're talking to? Do you feel like you're talking to no one? Do you feel like you're talking to an infinite number of people? Do you feel like you're talking to just one person, or does it depend on how many people are in the meeting? And I get a variety of responses, which is always fascinating to me. But one of the things that I often have people say is that they feel like they are talking to the people who have their video on. So say that there are like 25 people on the call, and yet only 4 or 5 have turned their video on. The person who is speaking feels like they're just talking to the 4 or 5 people who are appearing on the screen in full. So that's a pretty good argument for the fact that if you have your video on, people pay more attention to you and they direct their communication more towards you. And so let's do the converse of that. If you want to speak with impact, you want to have your camera on so that they also are paying better attention to you. So if you are speaking to inspire or simply to connect better with the people on the other side, make it easy for them to actually receive your message and turn your camera on. That's how you retain more of that power. If you just show up as a black box or just as initials, you are giving some of that power away. So, okay, the second way that we give away our power is we keep ourselves on mute the entire time. So in order to be impactful, it's important not just to be seen, but also to be heard. And a lot of times I'll find that people just, join a call and they stay on mute the entire time. And that gives the signal that they're here, but they might be doing some other stuff as well. They're not participating in full. You're just kind of, sort of attending. So if you want to retain more of that power, what I would suggest you do is allow your voice to be heard. Take advantage of what we say in the scientific way is take advantage of voice opportunities. So what does that look like? Well, it means like, for example, if somebody is asking for feedback or input from all of the people on the screen, don't just sit there on mute and wait for somebody else to speak up. Actually take advantage of that opportunity. Come off mute. Maybe you might want to signal to them, hey, I have something that I want to add by raising your hand or raising your emoji hand, and then speak up. Let them know what you think. If you have something valuable to share. But you don't want to do it, just to, for the sake of having your voice be heard, because that can be annoying. But, if you have something that you're like, hey, I think I actually do have a perspective on this that others might like to hear, take advantage of that, actually let that be heard by all those on the call. But like, say that you don't, but somebody else on the call does have perhaps a unique perspective on what's being discussed. Take advantage of that opportunity to, ask them to weigh in. Hey, Bob, I know that you've done a lot of work in this area. I think I'd be really curious to hear what you think. And I'm sure the other folks on the call would as well. So you're not calling them out because you don't do it to somebody who is not, an expert on it or doesn't have, real experience with this particular topic, but you're actually creating more of that dialogue. Creating more of that participation throughout. So it can be you speaking up, weighing in, but it also can be you prompting others to speak up and weigh in. That's going to create a much more satisfying experience for everybody on that call, but also it helps you to be more powerful because your voice is being heard. So participating in the conversation is crucial, and it helps us to keep our power in the virtual room. The third way that we give away our power in a virtual room is we forget to inject humanity into our virtual interactions. So virtual meetings can feel very sterile. You know how it typically goes. You hop onto a call and everybody is on mute and everybody's kind of doing their own thing and they're waiting for the person who's leading the meeting to officially kick it off. But that is very different than the way we would normally be gathering in person. Think about it. You come into a conference room per se, and it's not like everybody busts through the door at the same time. People all kind of come in on their own time. And what happens in those moments leading up to the official start of the meeting? You have chit chat, you have small talk, and you start creating those social ties that bind the team together. And it happens very organically. It's not like you are forced to walk in and, have a conversation with, Barb about, what she did for dinner last night. It just kind of happens. But in a virtual setting, you don't have those opportunities organically to have that sort of non-business small talk that you would if you were in person. So, that is actually a real disadvantage because all of that small talk, not only does it lead to better business outcomes, because it's true. If you have non-business small talk, research by Dr. Allen finds that what happens as a result of the meeting is better than if you didn't have the non-business small talk. But you also miss out on these opportunities just to get to know each other as human beings. So here's what I like to do if I am hosting a virtual meeting. I like to have myself off mute. I like other people to have themselves off mute when they come into the room as well. And typically I'll open the call maybe like 10 minutes early. And when people come in, I will greet them as I would if I were, in the conference room waiting for people to join me, and have a little chit chat with them and find out what's going on in the world. And I do that with each person who comes in, provided it's not like a giant meeting, but, I'll do that so that they all feel like they are joining, this kind of dynamic conversation. And I like people to stay off mute because even though, you might have a little bit of crossover and bumping up of audio, it's still, if you are a skilled facilitator in this case, creates a much better conversational flow. And it also changes the whole dynamic of the room. It creates a certain energy in the room that bleeds into the rest of the session. And there's a higher level of engagement from the beginning. Typically, that leads to a higher level of engagement throughout the meeting itself. And what this does is it helps you to retain your power because people are engaged. So what I would suggest is push for that conversation throughout that you would normally have if you were, all sitting around a conference room table. And just know that it actually has real benefits from a business use case, but also just from a team cohesion standpoint. So inject that humanity in an authentic way. I'm not a big fan of saying, okay, let's all go around and say what we had for breakfast this morning. No, icebreakers feel contrived, but having just normal, casual conversation, that should feel organic and normal and something that we would do if we were in person. And in my brain, when I'm thinking about translating in person to virtual, is always trying to come up with what I would typically be doing if I were meeting people face to face. And I know if I'm face to face and I'm holding training, for example, I'm going around and I'm talking to everybody in the room. You can do that virtually as well, but for some reason people don't. People just like to kind of stay on their box with themselves on mute. And it makes it really awkward whenever you kick off a call because it's like, okay, now we're ready to get down to business, but there's been no warm up. There's been no warm up to that. So make sure that you take the time to do that. It makes a lot of sense. All right. The fourth way that we give away our power is we pay no attention to how we're showing up on screen. We've been doing virtual calls for years now, and I understand that it can be taxing to think about taking care of all of the things that I would put under the category of your personal production value, which is really how you're showing up on screen. It's how you are setting up your background, how you're doing your lighting, how you sound. But this is really a critical component because if you are trying to have impact and influence and be powerful in the virtual room, you can't do that very easily if you are sitting in shadows, if you are only taking up half of the screen. And for those who are watching on YouTube, you've seen the people who are like this way. I can't even do it. It's more like this, where you're like halfway down the screen and there's a whole lot of head space between the top of your head and the top of the screen. Or maybe you have like a bunch of really distracting things in the background that you haven't given any thought to because, why would people be looking behind you? Guess what? They are looking behind you and they're probably fixated on that and not on what you're saying. Or, maybe you have audio that's really muffled or breaking up and nobody has told you that this is an issue. Your digital impression might be the only impression that people have of you. So you owe it to them to make sure it's a good one. You want them to be able to communicate with you as easily as possible without distraction. But you owe it to yourself because you want what is appearing on the screen here to be a good reflection of your personal leadership brand, a personal leadership brand that you want to be powerful. So what can you do to adjust this? What can you do to fix this potential problem? Well, first of all, fix your framing. It's not hard to do. Just look at how you are setting yourself up on the screen. And, I think I've talked about this before, the 3-finger test. If you're trying to figure out, okay, how do I set myself up? Well, what I would suggest is, for those of you who are watching on YouTube, you put your hand up like you're taking a pledge. Then you connect your pinky and your thumb. You take your temperature, like as if you're trying to, touch your forehead to see if you're hot, and then you stick your fingers on top of your head. And what you're doing is having 3 fingers space between the top of your head and the top of the frame. And that means that your eyes are maybe like 3/4 of the way down the screen. And then there's, a lot of space, a lot more space between your chin and the bottom of the screen. And I'm maximizing how much screen I'm taking up. So I am, having a larger presence in the virtual room because I'm taking up more of the screen space that I have been allotted. Also, throw some light on your face. Don't sit in front of a window. It's going to blow out. You're going to look like you're in silhouette, or at a minimum, your face is going to be, a bit shadowy. And it's critical for people to be able to read your facial expressions, because that allows them to be able to read the intent of your message a whole lot easier than if you're sitting there in shadows. And then also check your audio. And what I suggest is recording yourself on a call. All the platforms have a way to do that, and play it back and hear what you sound like. You might be horrified. You might realize, oh my gosh, I sound like I'm talking from a tin can. And if that's the case, get a different audio option. So I use this little lavalier microphone. It's very inexpensive. And I have used this as a workhorse for years, but it makes a huge difference in how you come across. You want your audio to be as clear as possible, because people are much more tolerant of bad video quality than they are of poor audio quality. So pay attention to it, and at least do a little bit of investigation to find out how you sound, because we can't hear ourselves when we're in this virtual setting. And then just make sure that whatever you have in your background is neutral and not distracting. You don't want to have people focusing on your bobblehead doll collection, because they're going to be looking at that. They're not going to be listening to what you say. And of course, that's going to sap away some of your power in the virtual room. All right. So the 5th way that we give away our power in the virtual room is we act like we're talking at people as opposed to talking with them. So what do I mean by that? Well, a virtual conversation is both close and distant all at the same time, which sounds a little bit odd, but bear with me. So it feels distant, obviously, because you're in a different space physically. You're not in the same room with the people who are on the call with you. But you also can feel very close to your conversation partners through the magic of how you're framing yourself. So, when I am framing myself, where I'm seen basically from chest up, that is translating a conversation that I'd be having in person, face to face, with somebody maybe several feet away from them. So think about, like, if you're at like a networking event and you've got like several feet between you and whoever you're talking to, or even if you're like talking to somebody across your desk or across the dinner table, that is a close conversation that you're having. You're not standing up in front of the room and pontificating. No, you're actually just talking to them, just from a couple of feet away. And if you go into that presenter mode where you're just talking like this and you're not really focusing your energy anywhere, but you're just talking into a piece of glass, that is going to feel like you are just talking at people, throwing information at them, and it can be off-putting. And it's also more likely to bounce off of them because they don't feel like you are connecting with them at all. So instead, what I would suggest you do is adopt the right mental mindset. So what does that mean? Well, that means that the camera, your webcam, is the conduit to your conversation partners. It's the portal to your people. The only way you can reach the people on the other side is through the webcam. It's not by watching their faces on the screen, because that actually is creating a barrier between you and your conversation partner, because they feel like you're not truly engaging with them. They feel like you're not making eye contact with them. The camera is the de facto eyes of your conversation partner. And you need to focus your energy through that camera. Pour your energy through that camera because that's how it's going to feel best to them. That's how they're going to feel like you're truly making efforts to connect with them. And you'll be able to make much greater impact in the room and exert much bigger influence in the room if you are actually focusing your energy through that camera. And here's the thing, it's hard to do that. It's very hard to do that because you can't see your conversation partners as well, especially if you are, looking primarily at the camera, right? Whenever you're speaking. Now, what I would suggest is don't stare at the camera. You can glance down and see how your message is being greeted. If people are nodding, you can capture that in a split second. If they're nodding off or looking at their phones, you can see that in a split second as well, and you can change how you're delivering your message. But in order to get into that conversation zone, what I would suggest you do is visualize who is receiving your message, who's on the other end. Maybe think about one person and you're going to talk to them. And how are you going to talk to them? You're going to talk to them by looking into the camera and focusing your energy through the camera, because that's what's going to feel best to them. And that's what's going to allow you to be powerful in the virtual room. So I always try to provide one big takeaway to our listeners each week. And I've given you like 5 different ways that we give away our power, but allow me to kind of do a synopsis of what I would suggest you do in order to retain that power. If you feel like your ability to exert influence in the virtual room is much less than when you are in person, try a new approach. Make sure that you are seen and heard in the virtual room, and make sure you are heard clearly and seen clearly without distraction. Focus on connecting with your conversation partners, not just spouting information at them, but connecting with them by injecting humanity into the way you are interacting with them and pushing for conversation and for dialogue. And then be as authentic as you possibly can be. I will have people say to me, "Oh, you're so good on camera. You're so smooth and polished." I'm like, I'm not polished. I'm not smooth. What I am is myself. So the key to being as powerful as possible in the virtual room is to have your true self come through. Be genuine. The goal is the camera might change everything, but it should not change you. I'm going to say that one more time. The camera does change everything, but it should not change you. Be yourself on camera and remember who you are and how you would connect with people on the other side if you were with them in person. And how do you reach them? Through the camera. All right. So we do this kind of powerful virtual presence training all the time. And perhaps you've been through it. If you have been, thank you. Thank you for being a part of the training family. But we also have a way that you can start to polish your own powerful virtual presence anytime you want to, because we created something called Speaker Dynamics University. So Speaker Dynamics University is our online training platform that is multi-layered and has a lot of different exercises and techniques and ways that you can train yourself to be more powerful in the virtual room. So if you want to learn more about it and how you can take part starting today, I would suggest you go to speakerdynamics.com/bonus content. Once again, that's speakerdynamics.com/bonus content. And then you'll get a quick rundown, a quick synopsis of what Speaker Dynamics University is all about and how you can get started as soon as you want to. Maybe it's going to be, a New Year's resolution. Maybe it's something you want to do before the end of the year. But I'd love to have you be part of the training family. So what is coming up on the next episode of Speaker Dynamics Own the Room? Well, we're going to be talking with one of our amazing team members, Maggie Miller, who is developing a program to help you figure out how to use generative AI to create powerful presentations. So this is a hot topic, one that has some controversy related to it. And we're going to dig into that. And she's going to share with us all the tips and tricks that she has picked up along the way, and see if it might be able to help you to harness generative AI as you are seeking to be a more powerful communicator. Thank you so much for listening to this episode. If you would like to make sure you don't miss any of them, please give us a like, give us a follow, and join this community that we're building here on Speaker Dynamics Own the Room. Until next time, everybody.